Oh, hello! Are you back for more? It seems as though you are. Here's another installment of The Gist of It, 'cause that's what I decided to call it. Spoiler alert, if you haven't read this book, don't watch this, 'cause I'm gonna spoil everything for you. Kind of. I read Looking for Alaska. Is that what I call it? I keep on calling it Finding Alaska, but it's Looking for Alaska by John Green. I know that Paper Towns is coming out in the movie pictures in a little bit, but it was recommended to me to read Looking for Alaska first. And to that person who recommended it to me, Beth, I'm very mad at you. And you know it. You know what you did. You made me read that very depressing book. And here we go. So here's the shortest version that I can give you without even really having a bunch of details. First 2/3 of the book. I like this girl, la 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 la. Last third of the book. Depression, depression, depression. Oh, I kind of accept that I'm depressed. The end. There. That's the gist of Looking for Alaska. If you want some more details, I guess I'll give them to you. So there's this kid, Miles, and he's pretty antisocial, and he decides that he doesn't like public school anymore, and he wants to go to a private school that his dad went to for the great perhaps. He's super into people's last dying words, and yeah, that pretty much sums him up. It's his junior year, and he packs up and he goes to this boarding school, like the next state over. And he meets his roommate, who calls himself the Colonel, and the Colonel gives Miles the nickname Pudge, because Miles is skinny, and irony, fun stuff. And then the Colonel's like, come on, let's go. And Pudge is like, okay. And then they go meet this girl, Alaska. Her name's in the title. Looking for Alaska. Anyways, and Alaska's like, yay, I have a single room because my roommate got expelled last year and I got my boobs squeezed. So they meet Alaska, and Pudge is like, I'm in love with you. And then it's all downhill from there. It's just hell. So they buy some cigarettes from Alaska, and Pudge is like, because he's never smoked before. And the Colonel's like, because he's smoked a bunch and he doesn't care. And the Colonel's like, loser. And then he goes away to see his girlfriend. And then Alaska comes up, and she's like, hey! And Pudge is like, oh, you're so beautiful, I love you. But he says that in his head. Doesn't say that out loud, because that would be awkward. Anyways. And then she says some smart things, and he's like, oh, I'm hooked on you, girl. And then she's like, you're pretty cute, but I have a boyfriend. Heh! But I'll get you laid. Dee-doo-dee-doo-doo. Oh, big thing about Alaska is she's described as very moody. Sometimes she's super happy and excited to see you, and she's jumping up and down and hooray, and then the next minute she's crying and she hates you and she won't talk to you. She's just like, leave me alone, and you know, she's just a typical girl. So first night that Pudge is there, some guys kidnap him from his room, and the Colonel's like, have fun. And it's kind of like this ritual that all the kids get thrown in the lake, the tiny little pond lake that's at their boarding school. But, surprise plot twist, Pudge gets wrapped up in duct tape and nearly gets killed. And the kids are like, take that, Colonel. Yeah. And don't worry, he survives. Kind of like mermaids his way out of there, and then trudges his way to Alaska's room, and she didn't know that he was duct taped, so she's like, stop being such a baby. And he's like, and he goes back to his room. Turns out it's a big deal that the girl from Alaska's room who got expelled got caught in all the things that she did to get expelled, because it means that someone ratted on her. And it's like a big, I don't care who it is, if you hate their guts, you never rat kind of thing in the school. So these kids thought that the colonel ratted on that Alaska roommate girl, and so that was like payback for that. And so they're pissed. Colonel's like, I didn't rat! You never rat! You don't do it. And then there's this other kid whose name I cannot pronounce, so forgive me. I'm gonna call him Takumi! But I don't think that's the correct pronunciation. Sorry. So, Takumi exists. Oh, sorry, I said it wrong. Takumi exists. Then classes start, and Pudge is like, yay classes, I know things and stuff. And then Alaska's like, hey, here's this girl. She's pretty cool. And let's go study. And Pudge is like, okay. And then they go, Alaska, her boyfriend, the colonel, his girlfriend, Takumi, by himself, Pudge, and then this girl, Laura or Lara, I'm gonna call her Laura. They go to a basketball game, and basically Pudge gets hit in the back of the head with a basketball, and he gets a concussion, and he throws up all over his date. It's a very magical moment for those two. So after that, Alaska and the colonel are just really pissed off about those kids throwing Pudge into the lake, and then it rains and rains and rains, and the kids flood Alaska's room, and Alaska's pissed off about that, and they're like, we'll get you back, stupid rich kids! So they do. Put like blue hair dye in their hair stuff, and the rich kids are like, no, my hair, it's my precious possession! And then they're like, truce, and they're like, you don't even know! You don't even know! Alaska and the colonel are really into pranks, and they're just constantly trying to top themselves. And then I think somewhere in there, the colonel and his girlfriend break up. Whatever. So then Alaska, the colonel, Pudge, Takumi, and Laura all tell the principal, hey, we gotta go out of town for different reasons. And they pack up and they go into a barn, and they have this big prank planned where they're going to get into the system of the computer system and send fake status reports to the rich kids' parents saying, your kid's failing your classes, get their butts in gear. But for this to happen, Pudge and Takumi have to set firecrackers off so that the principal will follow them so that they can get into the system. Prank is successful! And they're all in the barn, and Pudge is still in love with Alaska, but then he makes out with Laura, and he's like, be my girlfriend, and she's like, okay. And they all go through this drinking game called Best and Worst Days, where they all talk about their best day ever and their worst day ever, and whoever wins doesn't drink and everybody else has to drink. So you find out some pretty personal stuff. Then they all get back to school and they're like, hooray, successful prank! And everybody's pretty content at this point in time. So Alaska, Pudge, and the colonel are all just hanging out to celebrate, and Alaska and the colonel are just getting completely hammered, and Pudge is just kind of spacing out, daydreaming about being in love with Alaska. And then Alaska's like, truth or dare? And he's like, dare. And she's like, hook up with me. And he's like, okay. And then they start making out, but that's pretty much as far as it goes. And then they all kind of fall asleep, and it's really kind of awkward. And then the phone rings, the payphone kind of by the door, and Alaska gets up and answers the phone. And then she comes back and she's bawling her eyes out. She's super in distress. And the guys are like, oh, here we go again. Alaska's moody and crying. Big surprise. And she's saying, I have to get out of here. I gotta go. You guys have to help me. I need to leave. And instead of fighting it, they're just like, okay. So they do the firecracker thing again. to distract the principal so that she can drive away without being detected. The next morning, you find out Alaska died in a car crash because she was drunk driving! And the rest of the book, they're just trying to piece together how and why she died. So basically, after Alaska dies, the Colonel and Pudge just blame themselves for the whole thing because they let her go and they knew she was drunk and they hate themselves for it. And it takes a while for them to kind of include Takumi and Laura in the whole mess of it. By this time, it's been maybe a month since her death, and Pudge and Laura were dating for like a day, but then never talked afterwards. So it was kind of an awkward encounter there. Pudge gets kneed in the crotch by Laura's roommate, and it's kind of funny, but also sad, because depression. And Takumi was also in love with Alaska, because she's kind of cool, I guess. Takumi kind of helps them piece together some of the wonderings that they have of what happened. Is it a suicide? Did she do it on accident? I mean, she's super drunk, so... Ugh. In the midst of it all, the Colonel says Alaska had this one big prank that she was saving for senior year. We should do it as a dedication to her. So, after a huge amount of depression, they decide to go for it. Basically, they have like this guest speaker day that the juniors and seniors get to talk for that day, and they got a stripper to talk, and then he just like rips off his clothes and starts dancing and then runs out, and everybody thinks that's hilarious. And they piece together some things, and Pudge is super sad that he never will know her last words. And basically how it's all wrapped up is, she died, it happened, if it was my fault, I'm sure she forgave me already, and I forgive her too. Hooray! Depression. And that's the gist of Looking for Alaska. See ya next time. Oh, and then there's this other kid, Takumi. I can't pronounce his name. Takumi. Takumi. That's like my temporary tattoo.